All right. Well, I'm joined by Sarah today, and we are going to be talking about antinatalism in New Zealand. And for Sarah, it is the evening, and for me, it's the very early morning. Well, I say very early morning. It depends when you usually get up, um, but for me, it's a bit early. And yeah, so I think out of all of the antinatalism around the world, this will probably be the furthest away from where I am because we're basically on opposite sides of the world. So that's exciting. So we're talking about antinatalism in New Zealand. And New Zealand is a country where I've recently learnt a bit about antinatalism in New Zealand, which I'm sure we'll get into when we're talking later. But it's somewhere where I really didn't know anything about like antinatalism there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to like learning more and building on the small bit that I already know. But before we get into that, I wanted to quickly ask you just how did you just individually learn about antinatalism, become an antinatalist? What is your sort of journey, as they say, into it?
Thank you very much. Well, how it started was I think it was a series of events throughout my life. I sort of discovered the voluntary human extinction movement while I was in university, and it didn't really make much sense to me. And then I had a friend when I was coming out of religion. She introduced me to Gnosticism, and one of the greatest Gnostic scholars by the name of John Lash, he said that the Gnostics did not procreate and they were against it. And then my mother, she quoted to me the poetry of Abu Ala al-Ma'ari in
Mm,
Arabic, which is antinatalist. And then I saw a vegan debate on the internet where some vegans were criticizing antinatalism, and then I learnt the word, and then I went on the subreddit, and then I found that I've had these beliefs my whole life, and
mm.
I just didn't know the word for it. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just got two quick questions off the back of that. The first one was, what was the vegan debate that you watched? Do you remember?
Yes, I believe it was a girl by the name of Unnatural Vegan. She was criticizing Vegan Gaines and his wife for being
Right.
antinatalist and other vegans in the vegan community.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, she's not the biggest fan of it. She made a video recently. Well, it depends how you define recently, but yeah, she made a video somewhat recently criticizing some vegan events for having groups like Stop Having Kids there, um, which I covered on another video a while ago. And then my other question was, uh, you said that your mother quoted Almari to you, some of his poetry. Did like was it like a specifically antinatalist bit of poetry, or was it just a general piece of his poetry, and then you looked into him, and then you found his other beliefs?
It was the antinatalist one where he wished that he wasn't born.
Oh, whoa! Do you mind me asking, like, why your mother quoted that to you? Does she have sort of antinatalist leanings as well, or was she just so look at this sort of bizarre poem? Or
I think she sort of did it to educate me and to show me that there's something else out there. She's not an antinatalist, but she and my father have become very sympathetic with antinatalism.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. That's well, it strikes me as quite open-minded as a parent to, share that sort of literature with your child. That's interesting. Um, cool. So let's get into antinatalism in New Zealand. So I want to start quite like broad with the general culture in New Zealand. So, what is the culture like in New Zealand when it comes to discussing controversial ideas like antinatalism? Are people generally somewhat open to hearing ideas, or does it get shut down very quickly, or what's it like?
I think that it depends on who you go to. Young people will listen. Older people are not as open minded. Many young people have told me when I've brought it up in workplaces and with friends and acquaintances that they agree with it and they're choosing to be child free as well.
Mm. So is and you may not know any like proper statistics or anything, but would you say that being um sympathetic to that sort of mindset and I guess being child free is somewhat common in the younger generation in New Zealand, or do you think it's maybe just the circles you move in, or
I think it's a combination of the difficult circumstances economically and the inflation that impact people's choice, but also the fact that more people are conscious of the child free movement. So that impacts their decision to take that path.
Mm. Yeah, no, I get what you mean. It's interesting actually. I was looking at the website Our World in Data recently on their page on fertility rates, and it was talking about the sort of global trend of declining. They rank it as births per woman, and it's come significantly down since sort of like the 1960s, and they say one of the reasons that it comes down is because the cost of raising a child goes up. That was just one of the three main reasons they said. And that's interesting that sort of the other two trends uh don't really it's they seem like in sort of industrialized western countries like the UK, New Zealand, maybe Australia as well. um the other two factors, which were off the top of my head, they were uh, female empowerment and declining. What do you call it? Infant mortality. Um, but the third one seems to be much more sort of variable in Western countries still, or having like a massive impact, which is the cost. Because costs, at least in the UK, costs to keep on going up, 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 and up. So it's interesting to see that is still like uh, having an impact in New Zealand, and it is in the UK and loads of other countries. Um, so going on to actual antinatalists then in New Zealand. So I saw that. So we'll get into it more. We'll get into it more later. But there's Antinatalism NZ or New Zealand, which has a website, and I saw on there that I'm not sure who wrote the text on there, whether it was you or someone else, but on the website it said that they suspect maybe 1 in 20 people from New Zealand are antinatalists. So, which to me that's 5%. So that seems like really high. So I wanted to ask, like, from that stat, what do you mean by antinatalist? Do you mean someone who actually like adheres to the philosophy, or do you mean someone who just generally maybe has a sort of um, is basically child free?
I think, well, firstly, the website was written by Kane, and
Mm,
he's a YouTuber, and he saw my interview with Amanda about my books, and he decided to make the website. So he wanted to form an antinatalist party in New Zealand, a political party,
right.
and
Yeah.
you have to get 500 signatures to be able to register as a party. I'm
Mm,
not sure if he's still doing that because I believe he's in Vietnam at the moment. But basically, the whole campaign is to get the word more widely recognized by
yeah.
people, and more out there. As if it was 5%, I think that it would be child free. And he got that from the statistics website. And
Mm,
there are plenty of empty nesters and child free couples in the
yeah.
census. So, yeah.
Yeah. No. No. I get what you mean. So, how many? If we're talking about antinatalist, sort of, proper, sort of like the Almari types, the Benatar types, the whoever types. Um, would you say that being antinatalist is somewhat? Well, how many would you say there are in New Zealand? It doesn't need to be 1,003 or something, but generally, do you feel like they are insanely rare, really hard to come by in New Zealand, or do you feel like there's a sort of small community forming?
I think there is potential for a community to form because we have a lecturer in the university where I live who is an antinatalist, and he's published several papers and he's gotten it out to the community. And some people, Kane had a global sort of hangout, and we all
Mm.
talked about different ideas in that paper. So I think that there's potential for more uh, to be out there, but they just don't know the term for it.
Yeah, no, I get you. That's interesting. I actually, I saw those global hangouts, but I saw them after they'd happened, which was really annoying. Other, otherwise, I would have come to them. Um, yeah, just quickly on this lecture, are you able to share? I'm assuming because they've published publicly, they're fine with their name being out there. Do you mind sharing their name, and then I can maybe link some of their stuff in the description as well?
I'll have to look them up because I don't remember the name.
Okay. Yeah, no, 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 that's completely fine. But yeah, if you after we've finished, have any of the links to their stuff and can send them to me, I can link them in the description because I think people would be interested to, like you said, if there are other people in New Zealand that are antinatalist and you want people to sort of coalesce together, then hopefully, if anyone in New Zealand sees this, they'll have all the links in the description to sort of get involved with people, find out more stuff like that. Um, cool. So I do want to come back to the political party, the Antinatalism New Zealand, the Google Hangouts and stuff in a minute, but just to finish off on the sort of more macro scale culture stuff, I want to ask what your experience has been talking about antinatalism in New Zealand with sort of friends, family, and if you have as well, just members of the general public in interactions you've had. What's your experience been?
Very positive. most of them are very sympathetic with it as a movement. Some of them will kind of, be a little bit puzzled, but the reaction has been positive and people seem really interested.
And how do you navigate it with personal friends and family? You said that your parents are already sort of sympathetic. Do you, because different people sort of approach it in different ways. Are you like fairly open with all your friends and family about it, or do you sort of somewhat keep it under your hat with some of them?
Oh, I'm very open with many people, even with coworkers. When I was working, many of them agreed with it as well. And
Mm.
yeah, my friends most of them have children, and they've regretted having children. So they're very susceptible to listening to the message.
That's interesting that like even because like I did an episode with John on antinatalism in the UK, and we were both saying that we think the UK, relative to other countries, is probably one of the easiest places to talk about it. And it does depend on your situation, but yeah, like even for me in the UK, like I wouldn't bring it up at work just because it would very likely backfire massively. So it's nice that you're in an environment where you're comfortable enough at work to be able to talk about it, and people are actually like interested or receptive and stuff like that. So that's really good. That's hopeful for like the sort of prospect of building a small community, given that there's not as much of that friction of actually just talking about it. So that's good. uh so going on to antinatalism New Zealand, or how do you refer, is it just antinatalism NZ, or is that shorthand?
It's shorthand.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. I'll just call it that because it's shorter every time. So, yeah, what is it as a group or an organization, and who was involved in setting it up?
Um, Kane was involved in setting it up, and as I mentioned before, he has a YouTube channel. I can't remember the name of the channel. Something apostrophe philosophy or something like that. And he just
I
wanted
can
to,
link it in the description.
yeah, he just wanted to get the label out there so more people are aware of it.
Mm. So did he start it up so that it would help him get the five? Was it 500 signatures? Did you say?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm assuming. I mean, I don't know. What his plans are or whatever with being in Vietnam at the moment or whatever. But given that it seems, and maybe this is my bias from I've just like started hearing about antinatalism NZ, but um it's like the website is, there's a decent amount of stuff on there. So I don't know. I feel like with time you'd be able to get those 500 signatures. So yeah, like I think it's worth sticking at it. And also, there's other places that have already had it. So actually, in the UK episode, John and I covered that in, I think it was 2016, there was an anti-natalist political party set up here. And they had a manifesto, and they were, like fully registered and stuff. So if at any point you want the resources that they had, so that just as a bit of inspiration or whatever, um, I can send those over. But it's yeah, it's interesting that you say he wanted to set up a political party to get more exposure. That's something that people do in this country as well. Is like small single issue groups. They sort of set up a party as a bit of like a media stunt, even though media stunt sounds a bit dismissive, but I guess it basically is that, so that they can increase the exposure of a certain topic or issue. Um, yeah. So what? When did you become involved with Antinatalism NZ?
Shortly, I think in the middle of 2021.
And when was it actually set up? Was that pretty early on, or had it been around for a while?
The same year.
Oh, okay, cool. So you joined it basically around the time that it was set up. Okay, cool. And do you what are the sort of aims of Antinatalism NZ?
Obviously, the exposure and possibly having kind of discussions and forums like a book club and reading different
Mm,
literature and looking at it. It's more of examining things from the philosophical side.
mm. And I saw you've so in terms of what you've done so far, I saw you've had the Google Hangouts, and have you already started the book club?
I think Kane did it once and I couldn't attend, but I think it's on pause at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you know what book he did in that one session?
It might have been more of an article than a book.
Mm.
I'm not sure which one.
Yeah, yeah, no worries. And were you at the Hangouts?
Yes, I went.
And what were they like? How many people sort of was it? I think because I know they were global Hangouts, right? So did you get many other people from New Zealand coming along, or was it mainly people from across the world?
It was just people in New Zealand, and there were only four of us, and we had a couple of icebreaker activities, and
Mm,
we talked for a little while, but there wasn't really much done after that.
mm. And what are the sort of uh things that you've discussed with um Kane in terms of what you want to do in the future with Antinatalism NZ? Like, do you want to continue the Hangouts, the reading group? Are there other projects that you want to work on? Do you have any ideas that you just personally have as well?
Maybe sort of like stop having kids, have some merchandise and get things out there a bit more. Um, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and I think to be honest, if because I think there's a stop having kids in somewhere in India, and I think those I think those are the two places that they are at the moment is the US and India. So I I mean I don't want to speak for stop having kids because I'm not involved and stuff, but yeah, I think if you were looking to set up like a group in New Zealand, they would I'm sure they would help to do that. Um, yeah, and you know, unless you wanted to do like a local one with local sort of New Zealand branding and stuff like that. Um, So if people want to get involved with Antinatalism NZ as sort of volunteers or just attending some of the hangouts and stuff like that, what's the best way for people to do that? Get involved with the group specifically.
Visit the website and drop an email to Kane and yeah, see what he has to say.
Mm. Okay, cool. And I'll get his email from you and put it in the description so people just have it right there. Um, so moving back to general society in New Zealand, um, are there any sort of like political trends or movements or laws that are relevant to procreation or antinatalism that you think are worth commenting on at the moment?
Nothing in particular, but the government is very supportive of people wanting to get sterilized, which is a really good thing. And yeah, so I think the welfare office will help fund vasectomies and tubal ligations, which is a good thing. And apparently, a lot of men in New Zealand have vasectomies. So we're a responsible society.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. When you started talking, I thought you were going to say that they are very like pro-natalist. They're coming up with policies to, support families, stuff like that. Because a lot of countries are doing that. So I was surprised when you said that they're supportive of sterilizations. Do you know where that's come from? Like, why are they so supportive?
Obviously, because we have a lot of people that have been on welfare intergenerationally, so they don't want those children growing up in foster care or, in unpleasant situations. So I think that was the factor for that policy. But I have seen some articles in the past that they're concerned about women choosing their careers over children. And they're worried about the number of career women who aren't having children. So there's a bit of both sides in the
Mm.
spectrum.
Yeah, there's a video I did recently about a tweet sort of social commentator did in the UK. He's originally from Russia, but he's living in the UK and sort of comments on UK politics and stuff. Called Konstantin Kissin, and his tweet, he doesn't specifically mention career women, but he's basically pointing his tweet at them, and he's talking about how he thinks it's a sort of a great danger that there's a general trend now in society of women putting their careers or other parts of their life above um, having kids and starting a family and stuff. So there is this general narrative out there that people are starting to I don't know how you put it, like spread and stuff like that. Um, which is interesting because they say that it's because they care about women's long term happiness and fulfillment and satisfaction and stuff and well being. But and I'm no expert, but when I looked at some of the research on that, it actually didn't show that there was a clear relationship between having kids and long-term happiness and well-being. If anything, it actually showed that there was the opposite, that actually people who are parents have a lower level of long-term satisfaction, well-being. Um, with the caveat of the those things can be alleviated and all this sort of stuff, and it's hard to I'm sure it's like hard to measure well-being and stuff, so maybe all of this stuff needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. But yeah, it's an interesting narrative. I think it's one that's going to probably um, grow in the future, given that the trend only seems to be going towards that way. That people are becoming more focused on other parts of their life than um, having kids, and that's for a whole variety of reasons. Not one of them is antinatalism, because it's still such a small like niche philosophy and stuff. But yeah, so um that's sort of like politics and stuff, and that's interesting that uh they are supportive of that. That's really good. What about like the media? Has antinatalism be like featured or been commented on in the mainstream media in New Zealand? I saw that, I think, on Antinatalism NZ's um website, there's a page about media appearances, and I think there's even an interview with David Benatar, I think I saw linked on there. So yeah, what media have you seen around antinatalism in New Zealand?
RNZ, which is Radio New Zealand, they interviewed Benatar, and the lady was really, really upset and triggered by his philosophy, and she had a negative reaction to it. And as usual, why don't you unalive yourself? And
Mm.
yeah, but that was the only sort of one that I had caught on. But it was a very good interview, and I think it's on YouTube.
Oh, right. Okay, because the one I saw linked on the website, he was being interviewed by a guy, so maybe he's been interviewed twice. Um, so I'll have to maybe find that one that he did with the woman, and link that one as well. Um, and yeah, there is a page on the Antinatalism NZ's website, which um, just from memory, I looked at it a couple of days ago. I think it had a few articles and stuff as well. So I'll link that so that people can go through them and see them and stuff. Um, so just quickly going on to like your personal work. So I know you did an interview with Amanda on exploring antinatalism. So we won't go into it like in a massive amount of depth here, because people can go and watch that interview. I'll link it in the description. But just because I think, anyone who hasn't seen that interview will be interested. Can you give like a sort of a brief overview of the? Have you've written two books? One of them is a kids book, and one of them is about parents, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you able to give like a brief overview of what those books are and why you wrote them?
Um, I wrote the children's book because, and I chose the fairy tale genre because a lot of fairy tales romanticize motherhood and procreation. So I wanted to put a different spin on it and come up with a happy ending and keep it positive. The other book is focused on parents and not procreating, and it covers a wide range of issues like the futility of life, narcissism, the a lot of things. And I wrote that book because people were requesting me to write the book, and
Hmm.
there was a lot of demand for it, and no one had written a book on that specific topic. So, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and I'll put links to both of them in the description, if people are interested from what Sarah's just said, then they can go and watch your full interview with Amanda, and get a more um yeah, in detail look at the books. So are you working on any uh sort of other personal projects that people can look forward to at the moment, or are you aware of any other projects in New Zealand about antinatalism?
I'm thinking about maybe another children's book, but focused on the environment side of it. I had initially started an environmental book on antinatalism, and I'd written an introduction to it, but I haven't finished it, and it's going to take a lot of work and research.
Mm.
So I think maybe later on down the line, I will get back to working on those two projects.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's it's good that there's more like how would you put it? Because there's a lot of writing coming out of antinatalism, but a lot of it is academic. So it's good that there's more, what would you call it, like popular literature or whatever that is coming out, and you plan to do that as well. And especially kids books as well. It's an interesting sort of um overlap there between antinatalist books and like kids books and stuff. I'm sure in the future, as it gets more exposure, I'm sure that's going to trigger a lot of um you know uh sort of um well, I was going to say social conservatives, but actually it might just trigger everyone. um yeah, it'll be interesting to see. um so if people want to keep up to date and follow your work and Antinatalism NZ's work, where can they do that? Anything you mention, I'll put links in the description.
My Twitter, which is Gothic Rose X Rose 90, and that's all one word.
Mm.
Or the Antinatalism New Zealand website.
Cool. Yeah, I'll put the links to those in the description. And I think, does Antinatalism NZ, it also has a Twitter as well, right?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So people can go check that out as well, and I'll link. Did you say Kane had he has a YouTube? So I'll put that as well that people can. Does Antinatalism NZ have a YouTube or?
No.
Okay, cool. No worries. Well, I'll link Kane's then. Cool. Well, I think that was all my questions. Is there anything that you think we've missed that's relevant to antinatalism in New Zealand at all?
No.
Cool, nice one. Well, thanks so much for coming on. It's been interesting to hear about antinatalism in somewhere that's very far away, um, and also about your personal work and how you came to find antinatalism. So, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.